We're excited to present a wonderful session this afternoon called Pipeline and Mentoring, Our Future. The guest to address this important topic today is Dr. Jonah Fryerson at Duke University, who deals with these issues every day. We're excited to hear how she addresses these future scientists who we know will make major contributions to work that's important to all of us. Dr. Fryerson, please inform us.
Thank you. So thank you, first of all, for the invitation. I'm really excited to speak on this topic. As you mentioned, these issues of how can we support diversifying the scientific community, supporting people from diverse backgrounds in order to make sure that we have the most talented and well-positioned scientific workforce is something that I think about a lot. And so a lot of the very appropriate to the Rosalind Franklin Society, one of the ways that I think about mentoring is I liken it to DNA. So just like DNA is the vehicle that carries crucial genetic information that allows life to continue, I see mentorship in the scientific community as playing a very similar role. Mentorship is about social capital. It's about passing knowledge on from one person to the next. It's about ensuring that we have a robust and well-prepared population of scientists in order to answer crucial and important questions that we're asking in the scientific community. So when we think about the functional roles that mentors fill, they serve as advisors, they serve as supporters, as models of identity, as experts that pass along information, as tutors and as sponsors that help us to identify opportunities and to progress as emerging scientists. Some of the other benefits of mentoring are that it's been shown that effective mentoring can help in the development of scientific identity. It's associated with positive academic outcomes. It can help to increase the commitment to science career, especially really at any academic stage, from undergraduates to postdoctoral trainees. Mentored students demonstrate higher academic performance and satisfaction. And another point is that clearly defined expectations coupled with a strong sense of belonging lead to higher publication rates, particularly among women and underrepresented minorities who are graduate trainees. So all this just underscores the importance of mentors and how effective, positive mentoring make a difference. Some of the common mentor-mentee challenges that I've come across in my work over the past several years that will definitely impact our ability to have a diverse and representative workforce are the lack of transparency, ill-defined goals and expectations between mentors and mentees, lack of agreed upon structure or two-way communication, and all sorts of issues that relate to communication, a sense of belonging, conflict resolution and management, and a lack of sensitivity and awareness sometimes when it comes to what does it mean to really foster an inclusive environment where everyone can come to the table and feel comfortable enough to be their best selves. So these are the things that I strongly encourage us to continue to look at, to address, and these are the issues that I try to address in my work at Duke University and beyond. So I obviously, as being a woman of color and a woman in STEM myself, have had my own journey, and mentorship has played a huge role in allowing me to be able to overcome obstacles and get to where I am today. And it started with following the questions. So one question is, what does the daughter of an educator and a community leader with a love for all things science and math become when she grows up? This is a picture of myself and my younger brother when I was about 8, I think. And the answer is a scientist and someone who deems herself an advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the STEM community. So this picture is just a schematic of my journey. And the first thing you notice is definitely not a straight path. And there were lots of experiences along the way that fostered my curiosity and fostered my passion for science, in addition to the support that I got from my mom and my dad. I'm from Rock Hill, South Carolina, and so that's where the journey began. And I was able to get my first research experience was actually in high school. I went to Clemson University for a summer and worked with a faculty member in the biomedical engineering department there. And that's where I really got to see if the interest that I cultivated from reading books and watching movies about science fiction and different topics in the scientific world, if it actually could be applied, that passion could be applied to real life. And so that experience in high school really confirmed for me that I wanted to be a part of the scientific community. I wanted to be able to help address really important questions and help push research forward. So I spent time there. I went to undergrad as a biology major at Furman University, which is in South Carolina. And ultimately, I ended up obtaining my PhD at Vanderbilt University in microbiology and immunology. What this doesn't show is the number of people that were behind me at so many pivotal moments where I questioned my ability, where I questioned my whether I would be able to sustain this path and be able to complete my degrees at various points along the way, and whether I really did belong, being someone who didn't see very many people that shared an identity to myself in some of the spaces that I was in. So these are just names of some of the people that made such a huge impact on me, and at pivotal points told me that you can do this, you do belong, and you deserve a spot at the table. And so that all ultimately culminated in my dissertation defense. This is in September of 2012, so 8 years ago. And the work that I did at Vanderbilt in the Dermody lab involved understanding and defining the role of carbohydrate binding in mammalian reovirus in neuropathogenesis, so development of disease in the brain and central nervous system. And I really loved research. It gave me an opportunity to grow in so many different ways and have so many different experiences that I know I would not have been able to have, such as traveling around the world, communicating my research, and meeting people from all different walks of life. And so graduate school and education for me was really life-changing. And now I have the wonderful opportunity every day to work with leadership, work with faculty, and work with our graduate trainees and postdoctoral trainees to help to support their growth and support their path into research. So I serve as the Assistant Dean for Graduate and Postdoctoral Diversity and Inclusion, and I'm also an Assistant Professor of the Practice of Medical Education. So those are the long titles that I have, but let me tell you a little bit about my mission and what I aim to do. So my mission is to create space in the STEM community for voices and talent from all backgrounds, especially those from historically excluded groups, like women and minorities. I strive to build a platform to highlight and address issues of discrimination and inequity, and also find new and creative and sustainable ways to solve these problems, to make sure that ultimately the STEM community can be as vibrant and strong and innovative as possible, because it needs to be so in order for us to be able to help support medical advancement, medical innovation, and really better society as far as health and access to new medications and various other aspects of how research helps the world as a whole. I also work to broaden pathways to STEM. So it's well documented that there are barriers that prevent participation from people from various groups. And so in my effort as an individual to combat that, I've developed programs at Duke that brings in promising young women and underrepresented minorities to campus to learn more about the career opportunities available to them in science, and to reaffirm that there are people like you who are making important contributions, and you can be one of those people too. And we're here to help you be able to make that journey. I also work to build coalitions between institutions to understand how we can leverage our resources in order to be able to better address these issues, and also help students connect with other students so that they understand that they're not alone in pursuing their important research questions. And another part of my mission is to contribute to the scholarship of broadening participation. As scientists, we are committed to creating new knowledge and sharing that knowledge. And so that doesn't change now with the work that I do to help promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I travel to be able to do that and meet and learn from others as well. And one of the last things, and most importantly to this presentation, is creating a community of active support. On the left-hand side of the slide is a picture of myself the day that I defended my PhD, and my PhD advisor, Terry Dermody. And on the right-hand side is myself and one of the many students who I've had the pleasure of mentoring over the years. This young lady's name is Natasha, and she's currently in a master's program for biomedical engineering. And so Terry was one of the most significant models and mentors for me professionally and personally, especially as it relates to my scientific development. He helped encourage me, teach me, challenge me, and really mold me as a scientist and as a young adult. And so to this day, I still keep in touch with him, and he provides to me the consummate example of what it means to really be an ally and supporter of a young up-and-coming scientist. And on this slide, I'm showing pictures. There's so many other people. I really wouldn't have been able to overcome self-doubt, overcome professional obstacles of just learning and growing in the transition from a student to a professional to now an emerging leader in my field, trying to make change. And so I just, as you can see, there are people from all backgrounds, but women especially have played such a critical role in my development. I'm very grateful to them. And lastly, this is a picture of my kids. So I'm a mom, I have a son and a daughter, and I encourage them every day to think big, to not limit themselves, and to pursue whatever it is they have a curiosity and interest for. And so this always reminds me of what's at stake, not only for myself, but for all of us. We all have a reason and a why to what we do, and my kids are a huge part of that. So one of my recommendations for the new administration, in order to support the pipeline in developing young scientists, is that we continue to support federally funded diversity, equity, and inclusion grants, programs, scholarships, etc. This funding must be protected and sustained, if not expanded, to ensure that talented individuals from marginalized and historically excluded backgrounds have access to the resources necessary to be successful. There are barriers, and we need to make sure that in order to overcome those barriers, the individuals have access to the knowledge and funding that they need in order to be able to keep the pipeline robust and remaining impactful. Another recommendation is that individuals are, in recognition of the fact that individuals are subject to and under the influence of systems and structures in our society that perpetuate inequity, that whether it be regarding education or economic mobility or healthcare, that policy and legislation target the root of these structures. So it's not enough just to support and help talented individuals to be successful. We really need to look at the root of the issues and make sure that our policy and legislation is taking a really thoughtful and considerate look at what we can do to help make sure that those barriers are removed, so that they're not having a negative impact in the first place. So that concludes my comments, but again, thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to talking with you.
That was a terrific presentation and leaves me breathless when I think about your journey. I'm very, very impressed. Mostly, I want to thank you for being a role model and a leader and continuing on this trajectory. You clearly could have jumped off at any point along the way, but you didn't. You jumped back in with both feet. And that is what is the model for all those following behind you. If you turn around, you'll see them.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's a journey. It's one I'm I'm grateful that I get to be in a position to be a bridge, just like the people who helped me along the way. I get to serve in that role now, and that feels really, really good.
It's terrific, and you're doing a great job. We really thank you, and thank you for sharing that with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks. We will now hear from Bianca Jones-Marlin. She has a PhD in neuroscience from NYU and is a postdoctoral fellow in the lab of Nobel laureate Dr. Richard Axel. She investigates transgenerational epigenetic inheritance, or how trauma in parents after affect the brain structure and sensory experience of their future offspring. Her research has been certainly motivated by Dr. Axel, and she continues to motivate colleagues in her lab. Dr. Marlin is an incoming assistant professor of psychology and neuroscience and will be opening the Marlin Lab at Columbia University Zuckerman Institute in 2021. So we wish her luck, and we wish her to share that with us now. Thank you, Bianca.
Thank you, Carla. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I'm excited to speak with you about my research, what motivates my research, and specifically the mentors who have been an instrumental part of my scientific journey and will continue to be in my influence as a mentor to my mentees. So my work focuses on how a traumatic event or stressful event can be passed on to children and grandchildren of those that experience the event. And my interest really comes from my love of understanding social relationships and specifically how parents can help their offspring survive. This interest really starts well above and beyond before I ever was a parent. My PhD work looked at how mothers and non-mothers in mice, virgins, play a different role in rearing their offspring, rearing baby pups. So a mom will usually hear the sound of a baby crying and she'll go to pick it up and take care of it. Whereas a virgin animal will usually ignore the pup or cannibalize the pup. And my work showed that the neuromodulator, which is a love hormone called oxytocin, changes the way the mother, who formerly was a virgin then becomes a mother, responds to those animals. And I was able to take virgins who normally would ignore or cannibalize pups and make them into loving caregivers by treating their hearing centers with oxytocin. And this work is directly correlated with my experience and my belief for what science can do and how science can affect humanity. My parents, my biological parents, were foster parents. So I had the opportunity to grow up in a very dynamic home where I had foster siblings who had come from homes in which their parents couldn't always provide what was necessary for them to thrive in life. And they had an opportunity to come to my home, become my siblings, and share my parents. And so I think from a very young age, I was interested in why was it that my parents were able to love my foster siblings. It always makes me a little bit moved talking about it, but loves my foster siblings as if they were their own. And why couldn't their parents? And so I entered into graduate school really interested in the dynamic between parent and child and how to perfect those broken bonds. And my love of science and my love of biology was paired with my interest in how to essentially, bring justice to my siblings. And that led to this really amazing study that really picked up a lot of notice, because we were able to look at a mouse brain and see how changes in the brain are directly correlated to behaviors that are so essential for quality of life, that relationship between mom and dad. And that work would have in no way, shape, or form been possible without the amazing mentorship I received during that time. And by amazing, I really just want to highlight, it's not as if my PhD mentor, whose name was Robert Frumke, read all the books and went through classes about mentoring and did above and beyond what any of us could do as mentors. He set a bar that was high, and that bar was not changed based on any predisposition he had or any predisposed assumption he had of me. He came in knowing that he was also interested in working along the lines of oxytocin neuromodulation and figuring out what's happening in the brain. And he said, we need to get excellent data. He then said, Bianca will be the one to collect the excellent data. And that was it, end of question. And so entering into the lab, I did enter in with a lot of insecurities based on interactions I'd had with mentors who maybe did not provide that same level of care, support, and higher bar. They either put a bar so high that it was impossible to attain. I really think that was because they wanted me to prove that I was worthy of being in that space. And they would put that bar higher than they would put my colleagues. Or I'd have people coming in, and people would come with the assumption that I was not ever able to reach a high bar. So they would give me low-hanging fruit. And I'm forever grateful for that lesson of having a bar that was a standard bar that was inflexible, because that's what grad school is about. It's about working to become your optimal. And it was an optimal project, and I reached that bar well above and beyond. And it's something that I now take on as a mentor and applying that to my mentees. I try to put my predispositions aside to make sure that I'm allowing a space for my mentees to reach their highest level. And I am in no way, shape, or form one to say what that can be. I'll place a high bar, but I would never stop them when they get to that bar, because none of us know really how high we can fly. And so I'm very, very thankful for my PhD mentor for allowing me that flexibility. And that allowed me to earn a prestigious spot in the lab of Dr. Richard Axel, who discovered the pause. Sorry, guys. My next door neighbor is like playing piano. Can you hear it?
I don't hear it.
You don't? Okay. I'm trying to I wasn't sure if it was like, should I just stop and then like, okay.
I don't hear it at all. You're fine.
You don't hear it at all. Okay. So I'm going to just go back from that sentence. She's an opera singer. So like, oh no, it's happening now. Okay. And that allowed me the prestigious position of being a postdoc in Dr. Richard Axel's lab. And Dr. Axel won the Nobel Prize for uncovering how the mammalian nose works and how smells bind to receptors and where those receptors activate higher order areas of the brain, and really how we perceive smell in the world. And I use now smell. I went from using sound and maternal interactions and virgin interactions, and I now use smell to dictate to see how smell can dictate and navigate the life of a mouse in dads. And my interest in dads still stems from the parental work, but looking at how a dad has an influence on the survival of their offspring. And what my research has shown is that a father can have a traumatic experience, and without ever actually meeting its offspring, it can send a message of memory on to say, this traumatic experience happened to me, it's related to smell. And we're looking at that mechanism. How can a message of memory, of stress, of trauma, of wanting your offspring to survive, live on? And what does that look like when it may be expressed as anxiety, or maybe just expressed as potentially something along the lines of PTSD? And so we're taking things that are not human, not done in humans, but seeing how they can actually relate to the greater good. And having the opportunity to be mentored by Richard Axel is an amazing dynamic experience where it's a different form of mentorship. And I mentioned my mentors that maybe did not optimize mentorship than those who did, all because I've learned from all of them. And so I think we are all mentors, and we all perfect our mentorship, but know that our mentees are learning regardless. So let's just try to teach them the best we can. So what I've learned from my experiences with my mentors, both my PhD, my postdoc mentor, and all the mentors I've had before, is one, the formation of a young scientist. I was very impressionable for my mentors early on, and there were opportunities in which my mentors gave me the stage to flex my scientific muscles. And even if they were weak, and I just played the melody, they filled in the bass and they filled in the other aspects of the song to make beautiful science happen. And I was in experiences where maybe that wasn't the case. I can note of an experience where I worked very hard for a summer and produced really cool data, pretty impressive data that was then taken and published in a paper, and I wasn't acknowledged. And that's something that I thought about for a while in my PhD career. It hurt as a young scientist to know that I put so much work into it and didn't hear much about it. So I figured maybe it wasn't something that was impressive, only to see it published later with my name nowhere associated with it. And so I've learned a few things throughout my career that I really hope to instill in my mentees. One is the autonomy of science. I allow them space to share their ideas. This is how we learn and grow as scientists. I'm still learning and growing every step of my scientific career. And I've gotten amazing ideas and conversation from my young scientists because they're not forced into the box that we sometimes happen to drive into. And so I love their big thinking, and I really try to highlight that and try to honor that. Another thing I think I've learned, and I try to give them the platform to share that knowledge. We are very secretive sometimes in science, and I know there's certain aspects that we can share and we can't share, but to the extent that we can, I make sure I try to give them the space to share that, because that's what has been given to me, and I know it's strengthened my ability to communicate science, to understand other people's science, and to share the work I do with the general public and with the greater good, whose money and support we need in order to keep science going. And if I were to give suggestions to how to best support, maybe not as a direct scientific mentor, but those who are supporting scientists, both women and those who have been historically excluded. And currently, there are trials going on worldwide for the COVID vaccine. Also, historically, there's been mistrust between historically excluded communities and public health. Showing scientists, showing women scientists, and showing historically excluded populations and their direct correlation to the amazing science that's being done is essential for public health and essential for communities that have been hurt by science to trust science now. And that's something that we have to earn. That's not something that's going to be given. And I feel that both ways, as a woman, as a mother, as a Black woman, and as a first-generation American, all people who have been historically hurt by science. If not now, when are we going to build trust with our communities and our community as a whole as Americans to make sure that we as a whole move forward in health? My first recommendation would be presenting scientists, women, historically excluded people, and showing that we are the ones doing the work because we bring that trust with our presence. Secondly, I'd recommend that we support mothers in science. I had my first daughter early on in my postdoc, and I now have a 7-month-old son. So I have a three-year-old and a 7-month-old. And they changed my perspective of science only for the better. I look at their developing brains and how I interact with them, and it inspires my science. But it has not always been easy. And because we're also in motherhood, a historically underrepresented group, there are not many of us to share these tips. There's not many of us to share how we made it through. And supporting mothers, especially compounded with historically excluded people, means that we're supporting a group of brilliant scientists who need that support. I needed that support. And so honoring that decision and honoring those processes and honoring those people will only edify science. And that's our end goal, to edify science, to share knowledge, and to make our country better. Thank you.